So if you work in a corporate setting and have been for a while, you may have experienced or witnessed some type of harassment in the workplace.
You in the past, I'm in the future. You mad?
Hey y'all, if you're new here, my name is Kela Trishaan and I make videos on lifestyle, womanhood, and mental health. If that is something that you're interested in, go on ahead and click that subscribe button below and be sure to turn on your notifications so you don't miss any uploads. And if you're returning, thank you so much for coming back and thank you for your support. So as you can see by the little blurb that I just gave you, I'm talking about harassment in the workplace. Not just sexual harassment, but any type of harassment. If you've ever experienced or witnessed harassment, then it may be hard to understand how to navigate and hard to know like what your rights are and what you should do. So I'm going to talk about that today and give you some pointers if in the event you experience something of the sort. So if you're interested, go on ahead and stay tuned. Okay, so my first tip with dealing with harassment in the workplace, really anywhere, is to be direct and assertive with your boundaries. It's important to let people know what you will and will not accept, and the more you let slide, the more you're essentially telling people that it's okay to do said act. I do think that while some things should be common sense, it's not common sense to everyone. So someone may make a joke that, pass with this person, but then they make the joke to you and it's offensive. It's important for you to let them know right away that what they did offended you, whether you want to call them out on the spot or pull them aside at a later time, maybe when there's not a lot of people around. It's important to address the fact that they made you feel uncomfortable and they crossed a boundary. Let people know up front what made you feel uncomfortable so then you can lessen the chances of it happening again in the future. Okay, so my second tip is, if at all possible, try to avoid the offenders. Like, try to put distance and not interact with the people that are constantly crossing boundaries. This may be easier said than done, especially if you work in an office type setting where you're gonna have to cross paths with people, or you may share a workspace with certain people. But there are times where you can just simply not interact. Like, maybe you do have to share a workspace, but then you just don't deal with that person outside of like a project or whatever the case may be. I know for me specifically, when I used to work in an office, it's been about 4 years since I have, but when I worked in an office, there were a few people that I considered toxic, people that I knew if I interacted with, it was inevitable they were gonna cross a boundary and it might become an issue. I just simply cut my dealings to them to a minimum and only dealt with them if I absolutely had to. Sometimes that's really all you need. Like, you don't wanna feed the behavior. And I think that goes for anything in life, but I know at work, like, you're not there to make friends. It's nice if you do make friends. I have plenty of people that I met at work as coworkers and now we're friends, but at the same time, that's not what I'm there for and that's not what you're there for. You're there to do a job, and so if these people cannot adhere to your boundaries, or if you know there's gonna be a problem, if you interact with said people, go ahead and just put that distance and keep it coworker only. Okay, so there comes a time where even if you are like setting boundaries, letting people know what they can and cannot do with you, if you are avoiding people, there are some people that will go out of their way to F with you, to harass you. Again, whether that be sexual, physical, mental, whatever. So what I believe is important is understanding your company's policies for dealing with harassment, knowing who you need to escalate things to if in the event, it comes down to that, and just kind of knowing like your rights and knowing what will and will not slide. So with most corporate companies, there is some type of like HR system where, you can make anonymous complaints, or typically how I like to handle things, if I am in a situation, I address it. I kind of go through like a chain of command. So I address it with the person first, let them know, hey, that's not gonna fly. If it comes down to it and I need to escalate it to like my immediate manager, I'll go that route. And then if that doesn't work, then I may escalate it to their manager or HR, depending on the severity. Thank God I haven't really had many situations like that. I've only had about 2 where I've had to like really escalate something to HR, but you just want to know what's available if that time comes. I think that, for a lot of people, they don't like confrontation. And I mean, obviously you don't want to deal with backlash if you do have to escalate something, even though a lot of companies will tell you, oh, backlash isn't allowed and, there's a no retaliation policy. Let's be real. People will retaliate, especially if the said offender is like someone in management or whatever the case. So just understand your company's culture and understand your company's policy so you know what your resources are if you need to take it that route. Okay, so my next and actually favorite tip out of all of these is to keep documentation. It is important to have a paper trail, have some type of log, especially if you're noticing a pattern with a certain type of behavior with certain people or persons, whatever. You want to make sure that if you do have to escalate these complaints to someone higher in the company, you have actual like concrete data. So I think that when you, like, if you complain about someone and say, hey, this person's harassing me, it's one thing to say, I feel like I'm being harassed. Obviously, they're going to ask you, okay, well, why do you feel that way? What happened? Blah, 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 this, blah, blah, that. It makes it so much easier if you come with a log, like, okay, on January 2nd, 2020, they did A, B, and C at, you know, this time, whatever. Include the people that were involved, include a small description of what happened, times, dates, all that stuff. That makes your argument more credible. And I don't mean that to say that you're not credible if you don't have a log, but when you start escalating complaints to people higher in the company, they're going to want to see some type of documentation. They need concrete facts so they can do a proper investigation. So you can assist with that by making sure that you have a log of different things that happened, when they happened, and, you know, just like an example of how you were being harassed. And, you know, I would go so far as to include like what you did in that moment. Even if you didn't do anything, like, I mean, it is possible that you could have been fearful for retaliation or what may happen if you're in a situation where you don't feel safe. It's possible that you may not have done anything, but having that log telling people exactly what happened, when it happened, how it happened, will help you with any complaints that you may have to escalate outside of like your management team. Okay, so my last and final tip on this topic of harassment is to be open to changing the environment if it comes down to it. That may mean changing departments, that may mean changing companies. I think that it is important to be comfortable wherever you choose to work. I make videos all the time about self-care, corporate America, dealing with stress in the workplace. And I don't think that any job is important enough to deteriorate your mental health. If you're feeling like you're not getting the help that you need, if you feel like your company's HR program or, you know, higher ups are not addressing the complaints that you have, you feel like nothing's being done and things are just kind of being like slid under the rug, it may be time for you to look for other employment. I know that can be easier said than done, especially if this is your dream job or if you're making good money or if you're just simply not in a position to maybe leave that company right now. But I think that we need to, you know, look for companies that fit our values and that make us feel safe as much as we look for monetary compensation. So be open to changing the environment if it comes down to it. Like, have yourself a game plan. Go through the chain of command. You know, again, like I said earlier, letting that person know that what they're doing isn't okay. If that doesn't work, letting your manager know. If in the event it is your manager, going over somebody, you know, above them. Going to your HR team, and honestly, if you see that they're on some bullshit, then that might be your cue that you need to start looking outside of the company. The last thing you want to have is anybody retaliating against you or potentially damaging your career because you said something, or just even having to suffer in silence. It's not worth it. If you need to go, get out of there. Okay, you guys, so that is all that I have for you today. I just wanted to make this video because I went through something recently, not at my current company, but at the last company that I worked at, where I noticed that HR wasn't really for the people. And it almost seemed as if management was in cahoots. The person that was harassing not only me, but my coworkers was a manager. And it seemed as if when things were brought to the forefront about said individual, it just wasn't really taken seriously and we were gaslit. So that ultimately led to my decision to end up changing the environment, getting out of that toxic structure. So if you're going through something similar or know somebody that's going through something similar, know that there is light at the end of the tunnel. A lot of it really is just getting out of your head, understanding that no one has the right to treat you like shit. And even if they are paying you, like, you still have the right to work in a place that, you know, you're there to get your job done. You deserve to be supported and you deserve to have your concerns heard if there are concerns. So even if you're super high up in your career, even if this is a great company, quote unquote, if they're not for you, they're not for you. So you may just have to make a change. And I am living proof. I made the change and I'm much happier now than I was back then. So if this video helped you, go on ahead and share it. And like I said earlier, go on ahead and click the subscribe button and turn on your notifications if you want to see more from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you guys next time.
That they don't salute you. I need a bag, size is super. They turned your back, it's like I never knew you. Lead